morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I saw the registration list and I see we have people from all around the world. As Lindsay mentioned, I'm Jeff Corbin. I'm here with my friend, my colleague, Sebastian Hoff, and we're really excited to talk to you about what we think is a really important topic, one that's been getting a lot of attention in the internal communications industry, and that is really the importance of modern intranet solutions, employee communications platforms for companies, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, from all around the world. Also, the important role that we as communications professionals are now playing with regard to the vetting, the strategic thinking, the implementation, also really the ongoing success of these critical workplace solutions. So we have a lot of really great content to share with you today. If you do have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat during our conversation. We'll do our best to either answer them as we see them or at the end of the presentations. Sebastian, maybe before we get started, we could do just a couple of quick introductions so that everyone knows who we are. Maybe I'll go first and then I'll pass it off to you.
Yes, sure.
Jeff Corbin, I'm Principal Strategic Advisor for Internal Communications at Staffbase, along with Sebastian. I've been in the communications industry for the better part of my career, which is nearly 25 years. Used to be the CEO of a corporate communications PR consulting firm located in New York City, which is where I'm sitting right now. I was also the founder and CEO of a mobile app technology company focused on employee communications. And I joined Staffbase a little bit more than 3 years ago, really for the purpose of working with and helping the many great companies that are using Staffbase's communications platform and to help them to be successful in taking advantage of all that the platform has to offer. Also working with some great communications professionals and helping them to use technology to be more effective and efficient in their work. So that's a little bit about me. Sebastian, why don't I pass it off to you?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So my name is Sebastian Hoff, also working for Strategic Advisory, being with Staffbase now since roughly 3 years and consulting our customers on their intranet strategies, on their migration plans to a new intranet. And in my previous role, I was responsible for the digital transformation of a global Fortune 500 company, where I also had the pleasure to deal with intranets, with employee communications, making employee magazines more digital, bringing in also disconnected workforces. And as I decided to switch sides, I'm now doing this with a lot of our customers. And that's why we also thought, okay, it would be a good session today to bring in our expertise, our view of what's going on in the internet market. And what we're going to do is we're dividing this into 3 phases. So the first one is that we're having a look into what are current intranet concepts, what are the latest trends. Frank and Lindsay already talked a bit about this. They also talked about the achievements we made with Clearbox and Gartner. And I'm bringing in the perspective of how is Staffbase doing intranets, what makes Staffbase Intranet so special and what is the concept behind that. And later on, Jeff is going to talk about how to make such intranets successful. We have 3 main success factors that we're bringing into every single project. And Jeff will talk a little bit about how can you do this? How can you bring this into your intranet concept? It doesn't have to be a Staffbase intranet. It can be any intranet. So they are completely technology independent, and everything you hear from us can be done with any kind of technology. And this is an intranet event, and I personally do think it's a super exciting time to also talk about intranets, not only for Staffbase, but also for every company, because we're now in a situation that there are a lot of different concepts for intranets available. So you hear Frank talk about social intranets. He's written the book about social intranets. The first book, he kind of defined also this naming. We have portal solutions in a lot of companies. We have this topic of front door intranets coming up. We have in a lot of companies digital employee experience platforms. So you name it, there is a concept for it. And on the other hand side, we also have plenty of tools, plenty of technologies that you can utilize to bring those concepts to life. Most of the companies that we're dealing with are also heavily working with the Microsoft 365 suite. They're doing a lot of Microsoft Teams. They Most of them also have a SharePoint in place. This is the big elephant in the room, Microsoft, in most of the companies. And there are also other vendors around which are dealing with the intranet market. And the combination of concepts and tools with the third factor that I'm currently seeing a lot happening is that a lot of stakeholders have something to say about the intranet, have an interest in being a stakeholder in the intranet development. So it's not an IT project anymore. In former times when I was working for IT, an intranet project was solely a IT project, and there were some stakeholders like communications who had some news in there, but it was a technical project, and those times are over now. We're looking at projects where everything comes together and everyone comes together. We have internal communications at the table, we have HR at the table, we also have a lot of management attention on that, and those are still IT projects because we are talking about technical platforms. So it's a super exciting time because there's so much going on at the moment. So many people are talking about intranets. And we want to start with a couple of questions to the audience. And you have seen that on the right-hand side of your screen, you can select between event and stage. And if you're going to stage, there is a chat. And maybe you can do me the favor and just put into the chat who of you is actually using intranet currently in your company. And if you're using an intranet, what tool is it based on? So maybe you can just put it in the chat. If you have the time and are willing to, you can also tell us in what state are you? Are you looking for a new intranet? Are you looking to redo your intranet? So just put something in the chat to have it a little bit more engaging today, to not having only the two of us talking to you, but we can also work with what we are hearing from you. So I'm looking at the chat, but moving on, because intranets is something I had to look at my first intranet in the company around 2008. And intranets were there much longer. I just a couple of days ago had a conversation with a chap from a big company, and he said, yeah, my first intranet experience was flat HTML where we stored documents. And we have this final little overview that says, okay, intranets are going back to the 1990s. I'm not sure if this is actually true, because those were really libraries where you just store documents. So knowledge management was born there. And intranets have evolved over the last couple of decades. We had this library area where then also the first collaboration features came in. Then in the 2010s, where all these social media platforms came up, like MySpace, Facebook, and Twitter. And all the companies said, hey, social media is a cool thing. I want to have this inside my company as well. Social intranets came up with a lot of social collaboration in the intranets. We had communities the first time in the intranet where everybody could create a community and chat to each other. And nowadays, there is in a lot of companies a big disappointment about intranets, because those are really huge systems. And there's a lot of content in there, a lot of documents, a lot of pages. I did recently intranet migration from SharePoint intranet to Staffbase, and we found Christmas greetings from 2009 in this intranet. And this is where also this inconvenience with intranets is coming from, and a lot of companies are struggling with it. And if we are looking at intranets that were created over the years, they are all having the three same content types in there. And I tried to sum them up, calling them shop window, library, and teamwork. So going from right to left, teamwork is the thing which is classic collaboration. So you have working together on documents, you have peer-to-peer communication, you're organizing your meetings. Then you have libraries, which is usually the biggest part of intranets, where all this knowledge management is taking place. So you're storing documents, you're storing documentations, you're having a lot of static content. You probably also have something like a wiki inside of your intranet. And then you have this area of a shop window. And the shop window is the layer of the intranet, which is typically also the start page of the intranet, where the communication happens, where you can jump off to other applications. You have some service information, so the top navigation of your intranet, where you can find information about the company, how to reach HR, how to create an IT ticket. So the stuff that everybody needs on a daily basis to navigate to where they want to get. And typical intranets over the last decades all tried to cover those three pillars. And that's what made them so huge. That's what made those intranet projects also very long lasting and very expensive. And companies are trying to move away from this approach. If we are talking to companies who are desperately looking for changing their intranet approach nowadays, we are seeing 4 different demands that are coming in nearly every single request for a new intranet. And the first one is, we are not seeing intranets as the engine room anymore. We are seeing them as a kind of lighthouse in the company. So we don't need those huge systems that covering everything, where everything is stored. We need to have the single source of trust where communication happens, where everybody can rely on, I can find my way to what I'm looking for, but not everything needs to be in the intranet. The second thing is, it needs to be inclusive. It needs to work for everyone. Also, Lindsay said that you need to have the company in your pocket. You need to have this working on every single device. We are not talking about only desktop anymore. Inside of a company's network, we are also talking on mobile devices. We are talking about private devices. So everybody needs to be able to do that. The third thing is, we need to talk about employee experience. So if you're remembering back to the first intranet you've ever seen, that wasn't a really good experience. I still get shivers from my experiences there, because I wasn't hardly able to find anything in this huge system. This is something companies want to change nowadays. So we are not talking, again, about an IT project anymore. We are now having the interest in bringing in a lot of communications requests, but also a lot of HR requests. That's also why Norbert and Lara are talking today about the role of human resources in such kind of projects. We need to talk about employee experience, making employees' lives easier through such a platform, through such a digital experience. And last but not least, we don't want to have those huge projects anymore, and we don't want to spend a hell load of money on an intranet. We want to have something that is, so to say, plug and play. We want to have this easy to deliver, and we also want to have this easy to maintain. The times where we want to have 40 developers just working on our own intranet are over. We want to have a plug and play solution that can be maintained even maybe without the help of IT. When communications wants to change something in the intranet, want to change the structure, they can do so on their own. They don't need a developer for that. And with those 4 demands, Staffbase also started to look into the intranet market, because we were coming from this employee app approach. This worked out quite well for a lot of companies. And myself, I introduced Staffbase to my former employer as an employee app, and we recognized, hey, this is working so much better than our intranet. Why don't we use this experience, which is working especially for our blue-collar workers? Also, we are extending this to our desktop workers. Why can't we use Staffbase as an intranet solution? And Staffbase started roughly 3 years ago with an intranet concept. And we're very proud that only after 3 years we were announced by Gartner as a leader in the intranet market. And I would like to spend some time to explain to you how we are doing this. And the basis for the approach is that we are looking on those 3 pillars that I showed you as the parts of typical intranets, so the shop window, teamwork, and libraries. And if you're looking on that, the first thing you will recognize is that the size of the target group gets smaller from the left to the right. So shop window is something that every single employee needs. Everybody needs access to company news. Everybody needs access to the most important static information, like the description of the HR department, employee benefits. You probably need access to an employee directory or a phone book. And there are also some processes like pay slips, like vacation requests that everybody wants to have and needs to have. Teamwork already is in most of the companies already having a slightly smaller target group, because if you are having blue collar workers, they are typically not part of collaboration. And if you're looking at libraries, the target groups are getting very, very small. An example that I really like is if you're talking, for example, about data protection, there are some information that everybody needs. So you need to know as an employee, who is my data protection officer in this company, and whom do I contact and how do I contact if there's a data breach happening. Everybody needs this. This is a shop window content. But not every single employee needs all single data protection documentations of any kind of data protection processes. This is something that goes into the library and has a very limited target group, which is mainly the legal department. They need access to all those documentations, but not everybody. So put those nitty-gritty detailed documentations, which is knowledge management and processes, into the library area with a small target group. And the learning here is the shop window is relevant for everybody. And this is also where Staffbase said, okay, let's focus on the shop window and let's put the teamwork and this big library besides, because what we're seeing in the market is there's a lot of specialization. For teamwork, we have cool tools like Microsoft Teams, like Slack, that are good for collaboration. Everybody loves to work with those tools, and they're really, really good for collaboration. For library, so for a lot of documents, for a lot of static information, we have cool tools like Microsoft SharePoint, like Confluence. They're there to do knowledge management and document management. And what's left then is the shop window. And this is the front door intranet concept that also Frank mentioned in the beginning. And also Gartner sees this, especially for companies who have both frontline and office workers. They see the need to have this primary front door, this single entry point for everybody. And with that approach, we said, okay, if we are doing intranets as Staffbase, we are focusing on the left side, so on the shop window, to have this front door intranet approach as easy as possible, a lightweight intranet, and we are leaving the library content and the teamwork to the tools that are good in those areas. And also, Microsoft does this from time to time, so I can imagine that most of you are working also on MS365. And what Microsoft does is that they're saying, okay, we also have a front door, which is Microsoft Teams. And we have SharePoint for the library, and collaboration then happens in Teams most of the times in combination with Viva Connections. The thing is, with this Microsoft approach, you have not the one single intranet. You always have different tools. Even with Viva Connections, you have engaged the new Yammer, so to say. You have Amplify that is coming in as well as a tool. So you don't have that single entry point. It's also a very standardized tool, so there's not that much room to customize things, to brand things. And if you're talking about a mobile experience, you're also always talking about Microsoft Teams. So you have the standalone Microsoft app, which is not branded to your company, that everybody has to use. And for me, the most important thing is Microsoft won't be an employee experience tool. It's always a productivity tool. So Microsoft says Microsoft Teams is where the work happens. And if we are talking about intranet and especially about communication, we want to talk about trust. We want to talk about engagement. We want to talk about clarity. And this is, from my perspective, not something that happens in Microsoft Teams. And I don't want to do any kind of Microsoft bashing here, because I like to work with the whole Microsoft suite. And there are also companies who are good to use Microsoft Teams and Microsoft SharePoint as their kind of intranet. But I do think there are some factors that are coming in that should you start thinking about, when does a front door intranet make sense? And I tried to visualize that. Because for companies who are pretty straightforward in communication, who are not that big, who are not that complex, Microsoft is completely fine to use. especially in the beginning for companies who are freshly founded, who are just starting. Microsoft Teams and Microsoft SharePoint is the perfect choice. But as soon as your communication gets more complex due to company size, due to having not only desktop workers, but also non-desk workers, or your communication scope is getting more complex, like you're having crisis communication, you need to attract employees, you need to engage employees, or you're going through a transformation, through a huge change. As soon as you're getting more complex there, it makes sense to have this independent front door intranet solution, maybe in combination with Microsoft 365. So you can always also combine those two. We are seeing a huge trend there to include the front door intranet also to Microsoft Teams, to include content from SharePoint into the front door intranet, to also make SharePoint content accessible via search into the front door intranet. So it's always a combination of both. But the learning here is the more complex you are as a company and the more complex your communication is, the more sense a front door intranet approach makes. And with that, we are looking, if we are looking at intranets, mostly on the shop window character, having this lightweight with a also heavy communication focus in combination with Microsoft 365. And this is what we are calling the front door intranet approach, and which makes us so successful in reports from Clearbox or Gartner. And the thing that Jeff prepared for you now is how to make such a front door intranet or any other intranet so successful with our 3 success factors. So Jeff, the stage is yours.
Yeah, awesome, Sebastian. Thanks so much for that. So yeah, now that we have a good understanding of this concept of front door intranet, I want to talk a little bit about how can we be successful in concepting, in strategizing, in implementing a new or modernizing an existing intranet. So the work that Sebastian and I do in strategic advisory at Staffbase, we spend quite a bit of time working with our customers, consulting with them on this very topic. And in a nutshell, we've synthesized it down into, as you can see here, 3 what we think are fairly straightforward success factors. So the first is personalization. We have interaction, and then we have user experience. I'm going to talk about each of them. Before I get into it, if you do have any thoughts or questions, feel free, please. We encourage you to put them into the chat, and we'll get to them for sure. So, in our work and having worked with hundreds of companies over the years and helping them to think about their current intranet situation, one of the things that we hear repeatedly is the fact that, our intranet has grown so much over time. There really hasn't been any coordinated purpose to it or someone overseeing it. And essentially, it's become somewhat of a dumping ground for pretty much everything and anything. And as a result of this, when an employee who's been with the company for a while, or maybe someone who's new first comes to the intranet, any sort of really good experience, an individualized, personalized experience doesn't exist. So when thinking about your intranet, personalization is going to be a critical component, since this really is what is going to cause your employees to not only want to engage with it, but also for it to become a more practical tool, since it will then be able to speak directly to them as individuals and also will address their personal needs. You can see here on the next slide, we think of personalization in 2 ways. There are 2 types of personalization. So first, there's the personalization that is more or less going to be dictated by your company's employee database, your HRIS system, how they're identified within the database. At Staffbase, we refer to this as the passive type of personalization. And then the second is going to be more of the opt-in, or what we call active personalization, where employees are given the opportunity, the ability to sign up for information, for communications, things that they care about personally. So, question, Which is more important? Well, we definitely have some opinions on this. I'm going to share it with you in a moment, but would love to know from everyone who's listening in today how you view personalization. Do you do active personalization, passive personalization, or both? While you're maybe sharing some of that information with all of us, let me tell you how we view this at Staffbase. So we view active and passive personalization, obviously both as being quite important. But when consulting with our customers, we recommend that they start first with passive personalization. This is because it's going to ensure that every employee is going to receive the information, the communications that they need, also what you want them to know, since this is obviously going to be dictated by your company's database, your HRIS system. So they're not going to have a choice. It's going to be there for them. The active opt-in personalization can then allow for employees to have flexibility with regard to the communications, the information, the content that's important to them, and to create somewhat of a personal experience, which will make for a much better overall intranet user experience. And we spend a lot of time at Staffbase with our customers focusing on this. If you want to go to the next slide, if you don't mind, Sebastian, focusing on the topic of user segmentation and how to essentially slice and dice your employee database to ensure that personalized, that uncluttered end user experience. Based on various criteria, you could see here on this slide, it can be an employee's role, where they sit, where they live, where they're located, their type of employee, part-time, full-time, their status within the organization, other typical ways that many companies, and I'm sure you can agree with some of them that you see on the slide, with that companies identify their employees within their employee database. Now, as I'm talking about this, I'm sure some of you are thinking, well, is this really our job in communications? It seems pretty complex. Shouldn't this maybe be more the responsibility of someone who sits in IT or human resources? What I can tell you from our experience is that no, communications is very well suited for this responsibility. And to share with you a case study, a great example is one of our customers at Staffbase, DHL. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the global company DHL, 600,000 employees located everywhere in the world. Individuals who are working in trucks, many who are in distribution facilities, some of them are flying airplanes, a lot of them are sitting in offices. They have locations in more than 200 countries around the world. So with so many employees, so many types of employees sitting in so many different places, you might think that it would be really difficult, almost inconceivable, that a person who is, say, delivering a package to your front door where you live would be able to have a real personalized individual intranet experience, right? What I can tell you, as you can see here, is it's actually very possible. In fact, because of the way that DHL's employee database is structured, also because of the flexibility of the Staffbase platform, every single employee at DHL, regardless of where they sit or where they don't sit, right? They are able to have a personalized or relevant content experience when they enter DHL's intranet, whether it's through a desktop or we've spoken a bit about employee apps. So DHL has a very successful mobile employee app intranet. Okay, that's success factor one. If you have any thoughts, questions on this, please put it into the chat. I want to move on to the next success factor, which is interaction. So when it comes to modern intranets, giving employees the content that they need to do their jobs and to live their lives is obviously going to be the most important thing, right? But what I could tell you is that there's so much more to an intranet, and it's really an opportunity for you to engage with your employees and to essentially build a workplace community through the use of technology. One of the questions that we hear quite frequently, especially from those who sit in IT departments, is, what can we expect by way of a return on investment, and if we're going to rethink our current intranet situation or modernize our intranet? We've spoken a bit about Gartner. At one of their recent conferences on employee communications applications, during one of the presentations, what they say is, rather than asking the question about return on investment, the question that we actually should be asking is, what should we expect by way of return on employee engagement? And this is why we at Staffbase view interaction as a key success factor that you should consider when evaluating your current intranet situation. So when it comes to interaction, many of you, I'm sure, are thinking of this as two-way conversations or giving employees the ability to publish something that everyone in the organization can see. But as I'm going to show you, there are other ways that you can engage with employees through your intranet. So first, there is interaction through certain functions. So things like forms, activities, quizzes, trivia, work processes. Then we have interaction with content. So on a specific piece of content, being able to give a thumbs up, say. We don't do thumbs down at Staffbase. Being able to comment on particular content. So that's a second interaction level. And then there is the more open, public, social interaction. So giving employees the ability to ask questions, to be able to post pictures on social walls. Obviously, every company is going to have its own view on this, its own comfort level with regard to how much or how little do you allow employees to be able to communicate openly in a public setting like your intranet. So our recommendation when we hear this is to maybe start with the more basic, the more simple interaction, and then over time to develop a comfort level with it, and then to be able to, jump in full force. But again, the key thing I think to keep in mind and to consider is the fact that interaction through technology, it really does have the ability to impact engagement. And therefore, it's something that you definitely want to consider as part of your intranet. I want to take this one step further, and you can see here on this slide different types of communications, including interaction. They can be included in, say, a single article or on a single page on your intranet. And at Staffbase, we refer to this as the know, feel, do model. So including in one place within your intranet information like what do we want people to know? What do we like them to feel? How can we have them do something differently as a result of how and what we communicate to them? So you can see here for know, we have static content. We have information on a particular topic, news updates about, say, a campaign that is currently in the works in our organization. For feel, we have opinion pieces from people within the company that our employees trust. And then for do, we have the interactive content with a call to action on the page so that people don't have to go anywhere else to do anything. In this case, simply vote right here on this page. Okay, just doing a time check. Well, in the time that we have left before we take any questions, let's go to our third success factor, which is user experience. Many would equate user experience with design. So I do have a confession to make, which is that I am not a designer. I'm not very good in art. But what I can tell you, what I really believe is that having worked as a communications professional for as long as I have, this skill set has really set me up to work with and to advise our customers, our clients on how to design a successful intranet. So I'll explain to you what I mean by this. There's a few things that we at Staffbase think about and advise our customers with regard to the design and the architecture of their intranets. The first thing is that we want to focus on the content. content is really going to be the crux of a well-designed intranet. So defining your content strategy, organizing all the content into large categories. We refer to them as clusters. This is going to be the first step in really creating an excellent end user experience for your intranet. It's also going to involve making sure that these categories of content are ones that are going to be familiar to your employees, so that when they come to the intranet, they know where to go for the information, the content, the communications that they need to do their job and to live their lives, right? Once we've defined the clusters, then we need to prioritize them based on what we think is going to be the most important for a employee. And from there, we can design a homepage with the appropriate navigation, as well as content into pages that are going to be simple. They're going to be clean and well organized. The next thing to consider with regard to user experience is ensuring a consistent look and feel across the intranet. And you can see here on the slide, this can be accomplished by using templates for content to live in. From a design aesthetics perspective, also from a communications perspective, it's really about what I like to think of as three very fundamental intranet design principles: simplicity, familiarity, organization. This is what is going to make for an excellent end user experience for your intranet. Another thing quickly to touch on is branding. One of the key takeaways from the recent Edelman Trust Barometer report is that 77% of employees, they trust their employers more than they trust anyone else. So having your company's brand everywhere in your intranet, front and center, this is going to be really critical to its effectiveness. And you can see here on the slide, we're actually showing you a mobile device rather than an intranet through a desktop computer. The reason for this is that at Staffbase, we don't necessarily differentiate between the two when it comes to intranets. Why? The content, the ability for an employee to easily be able to access content, it should really be the same, regardless of whether they're accessing it through the large screen of a desktop or through a mobile device. That being said, with regard to mobile intranets, mobile employee apps, being able to showcase your company's brand logo, this is going to be critical to the adoption of it. As I mentioned, employees trust their employers. So when you're asking them to download a workplace app, having one that is company branded rather than some generic application, this is going to make a significant difference when it comes to them first being willing to download it, and then to the key metric of adoption. And then just one last thing to consider when it comes to user experience, and that is continuity across the various employee communications channels that your organization uses. Sometimes we do hear from companies that, oh, we have so many channels, it's too much, maybe we should get rid of some of them. I have a few thoughts to share with you here. The first is communications channels like email, your intranet, digital signage, Slack, SharePoint, the other Microsoft solutions, they're not going away anytime soon. They're here, right? So regardless of which ones your organization uses or how many you're using, it's not so much about the number of channels, but rather how your employees consume their information, their content. What is their preference with regard to where they're able to get their content? How convenient can we make it for them to be able to easily access their content? So don't worry so much about the number of channels. Rather, you should think about giving your employees a choice on where they can go to get their communications. Obviously, then this begs the question about consistency throughout the various channels. Obviously, if there is a way to create your content once from a single place, a single content management system, and then to be able to publish it across multiple channels, this will not only ensure consistency, but you're also going to save considerable time in only having to publish the content once, as well as potentially considerable money, from only having to pay for a single solution. So that's our third success factor, ensuring an excellent, consistent, maybe even a fun end user intranet experience. And yeah, with that, Sebastian, why don't you take it from here?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So this was a lot of content. but also a lot of helpful information, I guess. So if we sum this up, your key takeaways from this session is the first one from my perspective is challenge your own intranet strategy. Check if the intranet you're using and the intranet concept you're using is still the right one. If a front door intranet, you have seen how analysts are evaluating them, is something that you should consider. If you want to talk to us to get some more details, please feel free to reach out. And secondly, have a look on those 3 success factors. So relevance by personalization, interaction in intranets on different levels, and also user experience. Have a look into them, what you can adapt to your current intranet or to your new intranet if you're looking into a new technology. From our experience, we are bringing this into every single project. Those are the success factors really making a difference in the success of the intranet and also in the perception of employees. And we're already running over time. I just brought you 2 different reads that you can reach via the links that Kelly is sharing you into the chat. One is from Frank, you have seen him in the beginning, and one is from our precious Jeff, who also has written a real extensive guide about having a new corporate intranet. So this is something to read on